So let's take a look at the user interface for our Broadcast Hub app that we're going to be creating. First of all, at the top of the app here, we have a text box where somebody would type in the email address or a phone number for a member, and then they would click on the Add Member button. Below that, we have a list view component where you can see the list of all the members that have been added. Underneath that, we've got an area for the user to type in a message in a text box, and then a button for them to send the message. There's also another list view component that just keeps a running list of the messages that have been sent. So if we think about this in terms of this is our user interface that the user is going to interact with, we want to consider what are the events that the user is going to trigger. So there's two click events. They can click on Add Member and they can click on Send Message. So the user will have to add some members to the list. So we need to keep track of a list in our code that would be displayed here, but also a list that we can use for sending out our email or text messages. And then we're also going to, when the user clicks on Send Message for that event, we're going to have a list of messages, and then we need to take that latest message that was added and send that out to all of our members. So let's switch over to the blocks view and take a look at the code that we need in order to get that working. Again, we're coding two events, Add Member and Send Message, and we're going to rely on two lists. We're going to have a members list and then a messages list. So here in the code, I've already got those two variables created. Here's our members list that's going to store all of our email addresses and phone numbers. And then we'll have a list as well just to store all of the messages. So those two global variables. Let's take a look at the Add Member click event first. So I'm going to come down here to our Add button and drag out the click event. So the user again is typing something in the text box. When they type that in the text box, they click the Add button. We want to add whatever they typed in the text box to our list, and then we want to update that list view so that the display is showing things correctly. So I'm going to grab the block for adding an item to the list. We're going to add it to our members list, and it's going to come from our text box. So we're going to, and I'll just get this first one, and it's going to come from the text property. So whatever they've typed into the text box is going to get added to the members list. The next step is just to update our list view. So here's our list view members, and we're going to set the elements equal to our members list. So just as a reminder, list view has an elements property. That elements property is a list itself, so we can just set it equal to our entire list variable. And that's all the code that we need for our Add Member button. The other event that we're working with is sending a message. So they would type in the message box. We would add it to our list just like we did for Add Member. We would add it to our messages list, update the display, and then we would broadcast it. So we'll follow the same process here. I'm going to get the click event for sending the message, and then we will add to our messages list whatever they have entered in the text box. And then we'll also update our list view for the messages. Okay, this is the two basic pieces of functionality just for the text boxes and updating the list views, but we still need to get at the piece where we're going to broadcast our message. To do that, because it's more complex logic, we're going to create a procedure, and we're going to call that broadcast message. And we're going to add a parameter so that it is easier to reuse and that we can specify the message each time we use this procedure. So where does that get called? Well, that gets called after the user has clicked the send message button. We've added the message to our list. We've updated the list view. Well, we need to send that message off, and that message that's going to get sent off is the one that was typed in the text box. So Here is our complete code for our send message button, and we're going to fill in the broadcast message procedure now. All right, so what do we need to do in this broadcast message procedure? Well, let's think for a little bit about what it takes to send an email. And I'm just going to switch over to a notepad document here that has an example. So we're going to use an activity starter. We've used activity starters before when we've used them to launch maps or to launch a web browser, to look at a particular web page. We're going to use the activity starter in this case to launch an email application on your phone or your tablet or whatever kind of mobile device you're using. In order to send an email, that email application needs to know a couple of pieces of information. So it needs the email address that you're going to send the message to. In this case, the example says mail2:someone1@gmail.com. So that's the email message that is going to. And then we need to know the subject of the email and the actual message itself, or what goes in the body of the email message. All the rest of the information in this line of code is just encoding information saying what the different parts are. So at the beginning we have mail2: that is just specifying that what follows next is going to be our email address. One thing I do want to point out is you can't have spaces in here, so make sure when you're doing this and that when you're looking at your text strings that you don't have extra spaces in there. The next part is a question mark, and the question mark is just kind of saying, okay, here's my email address, and here's some information about my email. So adding in these pieces. This is my subject, and then I set it equal to whatever comes after it. So in this case it just says test, but you can have a longer subject and that can have spaces in it. And then we have an ampersand, which is just saying not only do we have a subject kind of variable here, but we also have a body variable, and that body is going to be equal to this testing message or whatever is the longer message that goes in there. All right. This is what it looks like for sending sending an email to one person. If I want to send this to multiple people, then all that I would need to do is change this portion right here to include a comma separated list with the additional email addresses. So someone2, someone3@gmail.com. Okay. So this, if you think about it, we can kind of come up with a general template here. So it's going to be mail2, and then here's where we're going to have our list of email addresses. And then the part that comes after it is going to be a question mark followed by the word subject equals. And then in here, we're going to put our subject. And then we'll have an ampersand and the word body, and then an equals, and then after that is where we're going to put our message. All right, so this is what we need to construct as a part of our broadcast message, and then we need a string like this, and then we need to call the activity starter to send it off. So let's take a look at how to do this in the code here. So our email addresses all come from the list, from the members list, and what we'll do is we'll just go through the members list in a loop and concatenate them together in a string. So the first thing I'm going to do is going to create a local variable. Now remember, a local variable just means that it is local to the procedure or the block of code here, so it's only available in the broadcast message procedure. I'm not using it anywhere else, so this makes sense. I'm only need a list of or a string of email addresses just inside of this procedure. And I'll just start that off with the empty string. Then we'll use the for each loop that will allow us to go through a list. So for each member in our members list, we are going to set this email addresses variable equal to our join block here. And we need 3 pieces, so I'm going to add one more. And we'll set it equal to whatever the current value is for that email addresses string. And then we're going to add on the comma. So remember, this is if you have multiple email addresses. And notice I'm just putting a comma in here. It's not a comma and a space, so just a comma. And then we need the new member from the list. So we'll add each individual member here after that comma. All right. The next part after the for each loop, we've got our email addresses created. So now we need to actually create our string for the data URI as part of the activity starter. So I'm going to come down to activity starter, and then I will get the set data URI block here. And this is going to be a large string. This is the one we were just looking at in Notepad a minute ago. So we're going to need a couple of extra strings that we can add here. All right, and we're going to start with the mail to, followed by the colon, and then the next part that comes after it is the email addresses, that string that we've just created, the comma separated string with all those email addresses in it. The next string after that we're going to have is the subject, or not ampersand, subject equals, and then here we're just going to make up a message, so we'll call this message from hub, like so. And then the next part is the body, so this is where we have ampersand body equals, and then the message itself comes from the parameter to our procedure, so we can just add that in here. So that whole pink join block corresponds to this line right here where we're recreating that mail to line. And then finally, once we have our data URI set for our activity starter, then we can call the start activity procedure for it so that it sends off. So that's it. We've got our code completed.